afternoon. You have my condolences. Dimitro died about 600 meters from my mom's house, and less than a kilometer from the house of my friend who is going to give birth anytime soon. He saved the lives of people in at least 3 villages. Our family is very sorry for your loss and will be eternally grateful for saving their lives. When the war ends, I will return home and I promise to leave flowers to honor Dimitro every time I walk by, even in winter.
It was the message which the wife of Ukrainian pilot Dmytro Chumachenko, Kristina, received. The heavenly angels are what people call pilots of Ukrainian air forces. They are the people who defend the sky above the Ukrainians. Every one of them is a brave hero and a professional at what they do, as thanks to them the enemy fighter planes don't succeed at spreading death and destruction among civilians who just want to bring their kids up in peace. 26-year-old Dmytro Chumachenko was the commander of the Ukrainian Air Squadron of Pokryshkina Tactical Aviation, became an example of incredible bravery and courage and was the guardian angel for every Ukrainian after his heroic deed. On the 23rd of March, Dmytro was defending the sky above the Zhytomyr region, where Russian fighter planes were heading. It was obvious that the Ukrainian Air Force was outnumbered, but it didn't stop a professional pilot. The furious battle in the sky started and suddenly the connection with the pilot was lost. At that moment the Russian occupants managed to shoot the plane of Dmytro Chumachenko. Dmytro often told his wife that ejection is definitely not the first thing pilots think about. The most important is to fly the plane far from people's houses, as the destruction of a downed plane is tremendous. That's why a pilot can eject only when he makes sure the civilians are safe, if he has any time to do it. That day, without thinking, Dmytro chose to become a guardian angel for several hundreds of people who lived not far from the village Triheria in the Zhytomyr region. The brave hero flew the stricken plane into the forest to make sure he saved the lives of civilians. He was aware that the distance was so short that he had no time to save his own life.
The moment you find out about the loss, you are frozen by shock. A black hole comes instead of the happiness which was inside you. But I have to continue living. You were the best husband. You could have been the best father. I loved you endlessly. I love you now and I will love you. You are forever in our heart, in my heart.
Kristina Chumachenko wrote. The heavenly angels are the heroes who are immortalized in the hearts of the Ukrainians worldwide. Strangers bring flowers to honor their names. Some of them continue to defend the Ukrainian lands every day so that their children, wives, parents and compatriots wake up without explosions and air raids. The others defend the sky above the clouds to blind enemy planes by the kindness of their hearts.
I wish you eternal flight, my precious hero.
These are the goodbye words of petite Kristina Chumachenko to her husband, a brave pilot who is known all over the world. Thousands of Ukrainians bowed their heads and knees to say goodbye to one more heavenly angel. Ukraine. Native town Popasna. Favorite street and friends who are waiting to see each other and dreaming of how to spend the next day. This story had to begin like this. Explosion. The remains of a Scud missile on the porch. Crashed car with injured people, 3 men and 1 woman. It was the reality of a 15-year-old girl, Liza Chernyshenko, who was heading to the shop that morning. When she came closer, the girls saw people bleeding. They needed emergency medical assistance. Liza started to shout for help, but no one was brave enough to take the injured people to hospital. Everyone understood that the road which they needed to drive on was being fired at by the Russians and it was going to be a one-way trip. Without thinking, Liza decided to save people by herself. She didn't have a driving license as she was only 15, but she knew how to drive thanks to her mom who had given her some lessons. She was driving for about 30 kilometers, avoiding the mines. At that time, belligerent Russian occupants mined the way out of Popasna in a checkerboard pattern.
I was very scared as I knew we were driving through the mines, but I sincerely hoped that they would not explode under the wheels of our car. I will never forget that apart from avoiding the mines, I had to drive around the body of a shot woman who was lying in the middle of the road.
Liza recollects. Finally, when the mine zone finished and it seemed that the most terrifying part of the trip was over, Russian soldiers opened fire on the car. Pieces of metal and bullets made holes in the car and injured people. One of the bullets hit the battery and the car was shutting off and stopping all the time. The shelling was continuous.
There was a lot of blood around me, but I hadn't realized where the bullets had hit till my legs became wobbly and I couldn't get the clutch,"
said Liza. As it turned out, the enemy's shelling hit not only the car but the girl as well. Despite unbearable pain in both legs, Lisa continued to drive till the car broke down completely.
Thank God, there were some Ukrainian soldiers nearby, who noticed the car and helped the injured to get to the hospital.
Now Liza and the injured passengers are safe and under the supervision of doctors. Unfortunately, because of what happened, the girl lost one toe and got a lot of injuries. There is a long-lasting medical treatment for the little heroine ahead of her. Thanks to the professionalism of doctors in Lviv, who were shocked by the stamina of a child, they did everything possible and impossible to make Liza walk again. Now, besides the desire to walk, she dreams of taking her godmother to safety, the only relative she has left, and the war to be ended as soon as possible. The story of incredible bravery and resilience of 15-year-old Liza Chernyshenko stunned millions of people worldwide. The girl became an example of unbroken Ukrainian people. Courage, unity, responsiveness, sincerity, and canned tomatoes. These words accurately describe the Ukrainian people and their brave moves during the Russian invasion. Russian soldiers had truly believed that they were going to fight against the armed forces of Ukraine, but it turned out they were rebuffed by ordinary peaceful civilians. In this video, we will tell you about the two most unusual cases that show the bravery of the Ukrainian people in their struggle against the Russian occupiers. Ukrainian bullies have long ago entered national history and become part of the cultural heritage of Ukraine. If before the war people feared them and considered them as the lower strata of society, after February 24, 2022, the Ukrainian bullies began to be respected. Ordinary people shake hands with them when they meet, thank them, and even ask for an autograph. But how did ordinary hooligans become superstars and national superheroes? The story happened at the beginning of the war, when Russian soldiers dressed in the uniform of the armed forces of Ukraine were able to enter the center of Kiev. Since they always had problems with the usage of Google Maps, they asked a local woman who lived there to show them the way to the center. But here's the trouble. Probably by the smell coming from them, or by their behavior, the woman suspected the Russians and began to ask where they came from. Let's have a little guessing game. With what action did they try to prove they were real Ukrainians? Maybe they tried to speak Ukrainian. Or maybe they showed respect for the Ukrainian independence fighter, Stepan Bandera. In fact, Russian soldiers took out a Ukrainian flag and began to wave it. That's how Russians think the Ukrainians proved to belong to their nationality. These actions attracted the attention of the self-proclaimed law enforcement service of the street, local bullies. The occupiers immediately revealed their true identity by shooting into the air. One of the bullies came behind the occupiers and threw a piece of asphalt at their backs. After hitting one of them, the Ukrainian bullies moved on to the others. They pulled the occupiers out of their armored personnel carrier and with the help of fists gave them a short lecture on why you can't invade Ukraine. Bullies seized all military equipment from the Russians and handed it over to the Ukrainian police. One of the main traditions of Ukrainian women is the preservation of vegetables and fruits for the winter. Homemade pickled cucumbers or canned tomatoes. At first glance, they seem like incredibly tasty additions to any meal or even alcohol. But let's look at these cute glass jars from the other side. Now it is a dangerous high-precision tactical weapon that can at least confuse or even shoot down enemy drones. A Ukrainian woman named Alina, who has eyes like a hawk, was just smoking on the balcony that day. She saw an enemy drone and in fear that she could be shot, took a jar of canned tomatoes and threw it into the aerial vehicle. After a very precise hit, Alina and her husband went down to the crash site and trampled the remnants of the drone. According to the woman, the drone belonged to looters, who were looking for empty apartments to rob them. Now the Russian occupiers and looters definitely need to buy anti-jar defense systems, because Ukrainians have a lot of preserved vegetables and fruits, and they will be glad to spend it on defending their country. Stay with Ukraine until the victory.
Mom, why can you talk only for 3 minutes? Are you taken hostage? Mom, tell me the truth.
Wiping the tears away, Olesia recollected her daughter's disturbing questions while talking with her on the phone. After the town of Irpin had been occupied, the local people were without any connection to the outside world, electricity, water, and access to groceries. It was possible to send a message to relatives only once in 5 to 6 days, and it took hours to find a telephone connection. Sometimes it was only possible to connect for several minutes to tell our families that we were alive. Olesia Niskelska, originally from Vinnytsia city, is an ordinary woman. She is a baker from the supermarket in Irpin who was terrified when the war started. She was going to evacuate as everyone else, but when she saw that all the shops of Irpin had been robbed by the Russians and people were left with no food, she made a decision to stay and cook for the whole town.
When I was handing out bread, there was a woman with 2 little children. They were kissing the bread I had given them and ate it immediately. I thought of my grandchildren and realized I wouldn't be able to evacuate and leave children like them behind.
Every day risking her own life, the woman went to work under explosions and gunfire. Every time she was hoping she wouldn't be shot by enemy bullets or missiles. From the 6th of March until the 22nd of March, she chose to live in the supermarket to be able to make bread and feed the people in the town.
One day the electricity went off and there was no water completely, so we took all the mineral water available in the supermarket and used it to make the bread. Besides water and flour, we also needed diesel to power the generator. The more diesel we had, the more people we could feed. We had to make everything with our bare hands. Despite this, we made a huge quantity of bread. There was only enough fuel to power the ovens, not the rest of the bread-making machinery.
The manager of the supermarket, Tatjana Heinvik, decided to stay and help Olesia. The 2 women managed to make not only bread, but hot food as well. They made an indoor barbecue and were cooking in the middle of the shop.
We were trying to give each person a loaf of bread. If there was not enough, we had to cut the loaves in half. If there were even more people, we had to cut 1 loaf into 3 pieces and add 3 to 4 pieces of lard.
There were airstrikes and Russian soldiers walking around, but these 2 women were handing out food to people despite the attacks. Unfortunately, a sniper bullet hit Olesia.
I didn't think I would see my children, grandchildren, or my mom again, but thank God the bullet only went through my arm. It was a cross-eyed Russian shooting at me.
A huge shop in the center of the town wasn't left unnoticed by the invaders. Several times, Russian subversive groups tried to detonate the roller shutters of the supermarket to get inside, but the employees were lucky, and each time the Ukrainian soldiers came just in time to catch the enemy.
There were Russian fire-based units just in front of the shop. Sometimes the Russians were aiming at the queue of people. When the gunfire started, the armed forces of Ukraine came and were protecting our lives with machine guns.
The women confessed that it was terrifying. However, everyone was more scared that the town of Irpin would fall. There are countless stories of the Ukrainian people's heroism. Each of them is proof of the undefeated Ukrainian people in the face of the Russian army. The town is now free from the occupants, but the locals still continue coming to say thank you to the 2 brave women.
Enemy shelling, explosions, panic, loads and loads of people forced to leave their homes to escape the war. These are not footage from the film about the war. This is a new reality that came to the Ukrainian city of Irpin in early March. While the whole world had not yet understood what was happening in Ukraine, the civilians of Irpin met real Ukrainian superheroes who were saving hundreds of lives every day without any superpower. The life of 44-year-old volunteer Timofey Ovrik, who evacuated more than 200 people from the area of active hostilities, changed in a second. Not even having a driver's license, he used driving skills from his experience of kart racing. This is a story of courage and a desire to help, despite the fear and constant threat to life.
On the day when the Russian occupiers began mercilessly shelling Ukrainian checkpoints in Irpin, and the radio reported that enemy troops had already reached the city center, I decided that I could not just sit, wait and do nothing. It occurred to me that I definitely could do more and that it was the perfect moment to use my previously acquired skills. In 2017 to 2018 I have taken a training course for volunteers of the Red Cross of Ukraine.
Says Timofey. On March 12, there were several thousand residents in the basements of the city, including small children, women, and the elderly. Day after day shelling and explosions became more frequent, food and water were running out, and access to shelters became almost impossible. People could not move around the city on their own, and those who dared were mercilessly shot by Russian soldiers. For people in need, ordinary volunteers, like Timofey, became real superheroes. With the help of other volunteers, he developed a contact base to help find shelter for people who were waiting for evacuation. In order to avoid clear shots, Timofey put on the uniform of the Red Cross, made the appropriate stickers on the car found for him by the Ukrainian military, and drove civilians out of the city every day.
Many times, on the way to the destroyed Romanivsky Bridge, from where the military transported evacuated citizens, people ran straight under the wheels so that I could take them with me. Many of them told me where the injured people were, who needed to be evacuated for medical treatment.
Timofey recalls, sometimes the cars of the volunteers came under heavy fire. For only 18 days of his volunteer work, Timothy was forced to change 3 cars. He knew the city better than other rescuers, so it was he who went to the most dangerous areas, to the border with Bucha, when it was necessary to urgently pick up a man with a severed limb, or take out a man wounded by an enemy mine.
We went to bed fully dressed and ready to go to those who needed our help at any moment, without wasting a minute, because every minute was someone's unsaved life. When we realized how many people were waiting the next day in fear, we could not quietly wait for the morning ourselves.
Shares Timofey. Volunteers had the opportunity to take people out only before curfew. So often they did not have enough time to eat in order to evacuate as many people as possible in those short 7 hours. Thanks to such brave and desperate volunteers like Timofey Ovrek, thousands of innocent lives were saved. Unfortunately, several superheroes never returned to Romanivsky Bridge with those whom they tried to save. And the citizens of Irpin will never forget those who gave them a chance to live at the cost of their lives. Share this video to let other people know what is really happening in Ukraine. Subscribe to the channel and give us thumbs up. See you.